representing you in Congress after 2026, right? So for those of you that know me, know that I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I've been just starting year 19 teaching school here in Lockhart ISD. So why run for Congress, right? Sitting on my couch back before the 24 election, and I saw a post by the Caldwell County Democratic Party that said, Michael Cloud's going to run unopposed. And I looked at my husband and I went, guess what, honey? I'm running for Congress. And he was like, okay, here we go. But the reason I did that was because I have a beautiful daughter standing back there who's 23, and I want a better future for my kids and her generation. And you wouldn't know it by looking at her right now, but she was a 3-pound, 6-ounce baby. She was born at 30 weeks. And Michael Cloud is a no exception, no rule, right to life, like pro-life, right? He doesn't have any exceptions. Well, she nearly killed me 23 years ago because I had something called HELLP syndrome, and that stands for hypertension, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelets. And thank goodness for good doctors. Thank goodness I was 30 weeks along, and I had a healthy baby. But I was sitting on my couch thinking about this. I'm like, what would have happened if I was 15 weeks and my blood platelets were at 103,000 and your blood doesn't clot below 100,000 and those platelets are nosediving 25,000 points every day? What if I was 15 weeks? I wouldn't be able to make that choice as easily as I can today. So that was the main reason I jumped into this. And I spent 30,000 miles in my car in 9 months driving around Texas 27. And in that time, I learned a lot of things about this district and a lot of things that need to happen because I was talking to people all over. And one of the things now that I'm championing is universal health care. And I'm going to give you a little story. Mom failed, right? So Jen has been on her health care insurance through the university since she was a freshman. And I would go in every fall and every spring and pay her premiums. I forgot in December. And in February, I went, oh, I don't think I paid those premiums. And I went and I called the company and they're like, oh, it's too late. It's out of the window. I'm like, okay. So I called Lockhart ISD. I'm like, I need to add my kid to my policy. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. It's not a life, what's not one of those life things. And I'm like, well, okay. So I called downtown and talked to a company and they're like, yeah, we can get you a stopgap policy. It'll be $100 a month with a $25,000 deductible. And I went, well, she's gonna be without insurance for a while. So that's why I'm championing universal health care, because you shouldn't have to worry about where your health care is coming from, when the next window is open to sign up for it, and what your deductible is going to look like. And along with that, being a kindergarten teacher, I would love to see universal pre-K. I just got 11 brand new babies in my kindergarten class, and I could tell day one which ones went to pre-K and which ones didn't. The ones that knew how to read their own name, the ones that could write their own name went to pre-K. The ones that didn't recognize their own name or didn't know how to write it didn't go to pre-K. So they're already behind the first week of school. So universal pre-K is another thing that I would love to see happen. Voting rights is another big thing. We have seen a lot of deterioration, and I think this last week or so there's been some speculation that mail-in ballots are going to be executive ordered away. Things like that, and we need to make sure that we can still do those. You think about our military and how many of them use mail-in ballots. How many of our people in nursing homes use mail-in ballots? Our elderly, invalid people that can't get out that use mail-in ballots. We want to protect those. And really the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this one's hard for me because I'm a teacher and I'm a mom. The situation in Gaza is the worst. And seeing pictures of starving children, listen to me, right, is more than I can handle. And I have made the decision I will not take money from AIPAC. I will not take money for any of those lifetime things. And I will stand up in Congress and tell them to stop funding the war in Israel. So those are just a few things that I'm going on. Do I have another minute? Do I need to stop? He's like, 4 more minutes. So kind of going on with what's going on in Washington right now and the troops being sent out into DC. and the talk of moving them into other cities to take care of crime, we cannot fight crime with just a police force. We have to fight crime at the root of crime. And the root of crime is poverty. When you are in desperate situations and you can't pay your rent and you can't put groceries on your table, the choices that you make are not always the best, safest legal choices. So if we could talk about poverty and bringing people affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable groceries, and not having that day-to-day, paycheck-to-paycheck life, I would bet money that our crime rate would go down. And we wouldn't have to be worrying about moving troops into these districts. So at the back table back there is my lovely daughter and my wonderful husband of 30 years. And they have my literature and some signs and a petition to put me on the ballot in Texas 27. My website is tanyafortexas.com, pretty easy to find. And I'm here local. If you don't know me, Fredo's got a number. He'll pass it along if you have any questions. And I'm happy to come to your home. If you want to invite friends to meet me, I would be happy to do that. And I thank you all for being here today. I know that Kendall's going to be introduced in a moment, and Alfredo is, I'm going to hand the mic over. But thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
If anybody has question cards, those index cards, if you could please get them to the back so when we can start asking Kendall the questions. Now at this point, I'm going to introduce John Castillo, or as we all know him as Big John. He's on City Council. What district are you in? District 2. He's up for re-election. Anyway, John is going to introduce our keynote speaker.
All right, it's Sunday. I know everybody's slowly getting around and moving around, but I applaud y'all for coming out here today to participate in our town hall with our new Democratic chairperson. I just want to say thank you to the elected officials that came out, both current and former. Appreciate y'all coming out today, because in the next 15 months, there's another election, but we have one this election in 2025, November, so don't pass up, find out, research, and look at your local candidates, and they'll be out there running, and they need input from us. We don't know what's going on in your neighborhoods. We don't know what's going on outside, through your eyes. So I'm glad y'all are engaged. I know y'all are engaged for the right reason, because y'all wouldn't be here on a Sunday afternoon to hear our new Democratic chairperson. But I appreciate y'all for coming out here and continuing the fight. And we got a good fight upon us. So I'll go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker. Good afternoon. His name is Kendall Scudder. He is a son of mental health professional, paramedic, and corrections officer who taught him values like the service to others. Kendall received his degree in political science from Sam Houston State University before moving to Dallas to work as an affordable housing professional and then for a real estate analytics company before opening his own land acquisitions firm. Kendall has dedicated himself to helping elect Democratic candidates across the state and improving financial transparency. The strategic planning within Texas Democratic Party in his elected role as vice chair for the finance department. He has also served as City of Dallas Civil Service Board on Legislative Committee of Apartment Association of Greater Dallas, and as co-chair of the Greater East Dallas Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals. In the height of the pandemic, Kendall also notably filed a criminal complaint with Dallas County District Attorney's Office against Attorney General Ken Paxton in an effort to protect Dallas County residents' access to the ballot box amid safety concerns of in-person voting activity. Kendall also holds a master's degree in political management from the George Washington University. He and his wife Carly reside in East Dallas, Junius Heights Historic District, where he plays pickleball, volunteers with the Funky East Dallas Democrats, and serves as a volunteer in patrol for the Police Department of Dallas, and also a recent father. I'd like to welcome everybody, give him a warm applause to Lockhart, Texas, Mr. Kendall Scudder.
Thank you, Councilman Castillo. Thank you, Chairman Munoz. Thank you, Lockhart, for letting me come and hang out with y'all on a Sunday afternoon. I sure appreciate it. Here's what I think run the show will be, if it's okay for y'all. I want to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about what I'm thinking about things, and then I just want to open it up and answer any questions or any thoughts, hear from y'all and what you want to see from the state party. Does that work for y'all? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I grew up on a Purple Hole pea farm in East Texas outside of Texarkana. And when you grow up in East Texas with lesbian mamas, you learn how to fight. And that's what I've been doing. When I was 12, Republicans were trying to take kids like me out of our homes and put us in foster care, so I started knocking on doors. So for the last 23 years, I've served on every level of leadership in our party, largely trying to reform it for the better and try to change the way that Democrats are operating in Texas. I was a county chair in Walker County, Texas, Huntsville, for those who don't know the counties. And since I've lived in Dallas, I was elected in the countywide position there to be the director of the appraisal district. Not a super sexy position to have, but a really important one. And one of my proudest moments there was that we ran a department that was so efficient that when we came back with an $800,000 surplus, instead of putting it in the building, instead of trying to do fun things, we gave it back to taxpayers. What a concept. Government working for working people. So whenever we found out that there was going to be an opening for chair of the Texas Democratic Party, I don't come from the Austin political establishment. I come from pretty far outside of that. And so my perspective's a little different than what we've always done. I thought it was time for our party to change some directions in what we're doing. And that's kind of what I want to make sure we're having more discussions about today, particularly in what's important to y'all. Here's, to me, some very key overlying things that we have to do different if in this state we ever want to see a win. Number one, we can't just take punches, we have to throw them too. We can't be a party that follows Republicans around like a bunch of lost puppies, letting them say what we talk about. I grew up in East Texas where everybody at the time were Democrats. They're not anymore. They were. And when little bitty, I look at my mama and I say, what are we? I hear people talking about Democrats, Republicans. What is this? What are we? And she says, we're a Democrat because we're poor people. And Democrats are for working people and Republicans are for corporations. We're all Democrats. That's how people thought it was, because Democrats earned that. Over years and years of taking on whatever billionaire, whatever banker we had to, we delivered for people when they needed us. But I'm going to be honest, if we're going to fix it, we have to look in the mirror and be honest. I think back, it's hard for me to think of something recently that we did that was big systemic change to overhaul a system and make life better for people. I think of the ACA maybe, which was coming to the table with a middle-of-the-road solution. It was not a big, robust plan to change lives for people. Think of maybe these infrastructure funds from Joe Biden. Those haven't come into effect yet. So it's our fault that people are not feeling that the Democratic Party is showing up and throwing down for them. We need to own it. We need to fix it. We need to know what our lane is and know who our people are. Our people are working class folks. And everything that we do when we get out of bed in the morning should be about how are we making life more affordable for people? What are we doing to make sure you get to see a doctor when you're sick? What are we doing to make sure your kids are in a good school? Because for a kid like me, in a town like mine, if I hadn't had access to a public school, that'd have been all she wrote. I'd still be on a Purple Hole pea farm today. And I spent one summer working on a watermelon farm and decided I was getting my ass out of there, and I moved to Dallas. But I'm just saying, like, that opportunity for me to do that was because of the access I had to a high-quality public school. As a coalition party of a lot of different people that come from a lot of different backgrounds, sometimes it's hard for us to have a message that really lands and speaks to people. But what every single person in our coalition has in common is that they're trying to pay bills. And life's tough, and the way I see it, and in the party that I run, what we're focusing on is the working class. That is who built this party. That is the lane that our party should occupy. Let's talk about what we haven't been doing right quick, and what we need to fix. Who here feels that in the last election, the Democrats' messaging was on point? Okay. We already talked about that. We got one. That's usually the reaction I'm getting in rooms I'm going to. We already talked about that a little bit, but it's important for us to be salient on what we stand for, who we are. Don't allow them to define us. We define ourselves with big, bold, progressive ideas like Texas Democrats have been known for. I'm going to give you an example. I mean, I think that this is a party full of patriots who love this country. And after Donald Trump got elected, they were trying to preserve it and trying to stop him from tearing it apart. But what they lost sight of is that the systems as they exist are not working for people who need help. And so when we talk about things like preserving Social Security as a party, I think we're missing the point. We should be talking about expanding Social Security as a party. Or talking about your ability to go and see a doctor when you're sick. We're missing the point. We should be talking about you being able to go to a doctor before you're sick and get preventative medicine. We as a party have lost that vision. I think on a messaging side, we have to fix it. Number one. Number two, who here feels like the Democrats showed up in your community in the last election? Also, the reaction that I tend to get when I go places. We're not even walking in the door, and then our jaws are on the floor when we don't get their votes. There's 5 major metros in Texas, but there's 40 mid-sized cities with over 100,000 people in it that we don't even walk in the door. So before we even start talking about communities like yours, Lockhart, or communities like mine, New Boston, Beaumont, Texas is bigger than Richmond, Virginia. Could you imagine a world where they're putting a plan together to flip Virginia and they never walk in the door in Richmond? That's what we've been doing in Texas. We haven't been showing up and doing it the old-fashioned way. You shake people's hands, you look them in the eye, you tell them what you stand for, you ask them for their vote. It may sound weird hearing that come from the millennial chair, the only millennial leading a major party in the country now, but it's just the truth. There's some facts of how we used to do things that were just honest, showing up, shaking your hand, and asking for your support. We have to get back to those basics and build a grassroots movement in every corner of this state, whether it is considered a major population center or not. There are 20% of counties in the state of Texas that don't even have a Chairman Munoz. They don't even have a county chair. 20% of counties in Texas. There's 9,000 precincts in the state of Texas. Only 4,500 of them have precinct chairs. Take a map of Texas, draw the line down the center. Democrats aren't even working half of it. It's our own fault, and we have to own it. That doesn't mean you haven't worked hard. It doesn't mean you haven't worked hard. It means that we haven't been putting together a plan on a state level to compete all across the state. Number 3, who feels like the Democrats were showing up where you received information? I am 35, and I'm going to say something that usually makes room full of Democrats gasp. I've never watched an episode of Rachel Maddow in my life. She seems like a nice lady. I'm sure she's great. My wife and I don't have cable in our house. I don't watch MSNBC. And me and my friends, we get our information from different ways than other people do. The Texas Democratic Party doesn't even have a Spanish language comms department. The National Democratic Party doesn't even have a Spanish language comms department. Texas is a state where 30% of our citizens speak Spanish at home. That doesn't mean they don't speak English, but it means that their preferred mode of communication where they receive information is in Spanish. And we're not talking to them. So we're not showing up. We're not talking about the things that are important to them. And we're not showing up where they're actually receiving information. It's no one's fault but ours, the Texas Democratic Party, as to why we have been losing elections in this state. So we have to not be afraid to radically rethink the way that this party has been operating. That is not a knock on anybody. I was one of those people sitting around the table who had some of these opinions that didn't work out too. But it's about admitting when you make mistakes, owning your shit, and moving forward with a plan to try to do things differently. That's what I'm trying to accomplish as the new state chairman of the party. I know it's going to be a challenge, but I think Texans do their best work when we're scrappy and our backs are against the wall. And I think this is a good year for us. Republicans are about to nominate the least popular elected official in Texas as their standard bearer. A man who is a literal fraud. An actual thief. I'm not even just saying it. He couldn't even sue me for me saying it because it's true. He was found guilty as a literal thief. A man whose only defense of his poor behavior is, don't blame me, I was just cheating on my wife. This is our opportunity to take this country back and to take this state back. Because take that and combine it with what we've seen over the last 8 months in this Trump administration, where they have pushed the largest tax increase on working class people in my lifetime with these tariffs, where they have pushed a budget bill where for the first time in U.S. history, the poorest people in this country will pay a higher tax rate than the people at the top. Rich people, before they even go to an accountant, will pay less than their waitresses, will pay less than their secretaries, they'll pay less than their top secret cabana boys, okay? That is unconscionable. That is not the country as it was built. It is not the country as it has ever operated. But the billionaire class has taken over this country, and they are treating our tax dollars like their own personal feeding troughs. They're lining their own pockets with programs that help them while gutting rural hospitals. 324 rural hospitals in this country are going to shut down because of Donald Trump's billionaire bootlicking bill. Your energy costs are going to go up because they have stopped subsidizing clean energy. We're all going to start paying more. But the richest people in this country have just been handed the largest cut they have seen in American history. It couldn't be more clear. So if we're fixing those problems I illuminated to you, and if they're nominating Ken Paxton at the top of their ticket, and if Donald Trump are doing all those things, the only thing that we have to do to be successful is build a movement that is people-focused in every corner of this state and provide a vision for this country that is not just we hate Donald Trump, but is instead what do we want to do for you to make your life better. It's going to take working with our legislators to get that accomplished. It's going to be coming to people with big, bold, progressive plans for their lives. Some people aren't going to like it. Usually they're wearing red hats. They weren't going to like it either way. But in the lowest turnout state in the country, Texas, where I go places like Webb County and they had precincts in a presidential year where turnout was 13%. There is no argument that we are reaching those people and creating a vision for what we could do for them, and then when we win, actually doing it. That's how we earn systemic trust. That's how we get back to the spot as when I first started talking to you, where people will say, Democrats work for people, Republicans work for corporation, we're Democrats. And that's what we're trying to get people in Texas back to. It only happens if we show up in communities like this and we fight to deliver. So, with that groundwork laid, I want to open the floor up and talk about whatever you want to talk about. What do we got? Yes, sir. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Baskett. I'm going to be the liaison between all of the questions that folks have submitted and
Cool.
you. If you haven't submitted a question but you would like to, there are cards on the table over there. You can hand them to Vanessa in the black dress in the back. So the first question that we have is, given that Republicans have redrawn congressional maps, what is the statewide party going to do to drive voter registration and turnout?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So let me talk about redistricting first in case there's anybody here that's not necessarily familiar to it. Redistricting is basically how maps are drawn, okay? You don't have to understand the intricacies of it to know that politicians use that system so that they can draw districts that make it easier for them to get reelected. And the argument that the Democrats are making is, you, as a voter, should have the right to pick who your representatives are, not the other way around. And that at a time where the government gets to come in and say that they get to pick their voters and rig elections in their favor, it takes away your power as a citizen of this country. We're not going to stand for it. So what our legislators chose to do was to do what they call a quorum break. If a certain number of people don't show up, you can't conduct business in the legislature. And in Texas, that threshold is particularly high because our founders of Texas didn't like government poking them around and telling them what to do. So in Texas founders, General Sam Houston himself wrote into our Constitution a quorum break, where it takes 2/3 in order to conduct business. They didn't want a tyrannical majority to oppress a minority ideology group of people. So we exercised our constitutional rights and left. I went to Chicago with them. I know some people don't like it, and that's okay. It's our constitutionally protected right to do that. In doing that, what they did, they accomplished a couple of things. Number one, when the governor called a special session, they're only allowed to last for 30 days. They ran out the clock, they killed the first special session. The reason they wanted to do that was because the special session was called to help flood victims, and instead of helping flood victims, they started playing a bunch of politics. We're not going to be a part of that. We're here to help people that need us. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for the people of Texas. So that is kind of setting the standard for you about what kind of redistricting and gerrymandering is, what it looks like. So the question is, what are we going to do to respond to these maps? The second session has come into effect. The maps ended up passing. So we see states like California start trying to offset those numbers on a national level. And on a national number, it may be helpful, but locally, these maps are still really bad. And I don't consider them a victory in any stretch of the imagination. Under these current maps, these most recent maps that just passed, it would take an Hispanic Texan 3 votes to equate the representational voting power of 1 white Texan. It would take a black Texan 5 votes to equal representation voting proportion of 1 white voter, okay? You don't have to like the racial dynamics of what's happening, but it's a reality that nobody should be weighted differently in their ability to have representation in their government. This sitting map does. It is obvious that it does. The Voting Rights Act came from a Texas Democrat 60 years ago this month, Lyndon Johnson, the namesake for my son, Lyndon. Every single time that districts have been drawn since the Voting Rights Act was passed, Texas has been found guilty of violating the Voting Rights Act. Every single time. So, what's about to happen? We're taking it to court. We told Greg Abbott we will see you in court. It has already been filed. Those hearings start in September, and unless they throw the law out, which is very obvious as to what this is violating, they will be found having violated the Voting Rights Act. And so these maps are not final by any stretch. They're going to have to get redrawn by either the legislature or the courts. So I wouldn't feel comfortable that these new maps are going to be in place yet. We're still working through some of that. Let's say that there's a world where the current maps go into effect. Again, we're far from that, but let's say that they are. By 2024 numbers, it would mean that Democrats could lose 5 seats in Congress. By 2024 numbers, why is nobody talking about other elections? Because 24 was a really bad election for Democrats. Let's look at a really good election for Democrats, like maybe the last time we had a midterm election during a Trump presidency in 2018. If 2018 numbers are accurate, Democrats are going to gain a seat in these maps. So Texas Democrats have an opportunity to do the funniest thing possible. And that's tell Republicans to take these maps and shove them up their ass, okay? But that only happens if we organize the way we did in 2018 and beyond that. And that's what we have to do in the plan of what we want to accomplish. One more point and then we'll go to the next one. You can't gerrymander a statewide race. But what they're doing is they're creating maps where they're taking urban areas and drawing them way out into rural areas. So southwest Travis County is now in a district with Polk County and Livingston. Where I live in East Dallas is now back out to almost my hometown. It goes all the way out to Gilmer. And those districts are not as solid red as you'd think because of the way they're carrying them out. What that means is that we are going to spend money to compete in every one of those races. Because previous elections don't vote, polls don't vote, people do. And we have an opportunity to flip these seats. We're running in every county in the state, but with DCCC and national figures pouring money into these districts, there's going to be places in this state that have not typically had money spent to hear Democratic messaging, and they're about to now. It helps us on a statewide level in our ability to flip a seat. So, is it ideal? It is not. Is it a racial gerrymander? It is. Is it morally wrong? It absolutely is. But if it goes into effect, the world is not over. We're going to push, we're going to fight tooth and nail every single day to make sure that we get some progress here to the best of our ability. Can't make you a promise, but I hope you see that I'm going to throw down and fight and do everything I can to make it counteract.
Thank you. And I think this somewhat was just answered, but how is the statewide party going to help small communities like ours? Specifically, what plans does the state party have in place to help local candidates get elected?
Yeah. So, I don't think it's news to anyone that the Texas Democratic Party wasn't in great shape. Okay? We're having to rebuild a whole lot of it from the ground up, and it's taken me some time. I can't get it done overnight. I'm a volunteer, by the way, 18 to 20 hours a day. We're doing some of the really unsexy internal stuff that's really important right now, which I know you don't want to hear the intricacies of our compliance program or things like that. Once we get through that, we're going to have an opportunity to overhaul the departments that I think you see in day-to-day to be helpful to you. One is the comms department, which I think overhauling it to making it a bilingual comms department that is focused in its messaging will be helpful to every single part of this state. But as someone who has been the chairman of a small county before, I can tell you I know how hard it is. Every one of these urban counties are really hard to be chairs of too, by the way. It's a challenge in a different way, but it's a challenge. And so in rural counties, what I see as things that can be the most helpful are, obviously everyone wants resources, but that money just doesn't exist. It's not there. So we have to come up with some plans until we can find that money as to what we can do to be helpful. So I think what we can do is turn the party into a clearinghouse of advertising. So that if Caldwell County is ready to run ads, instead of them having to find a graphic designer and pull it all together, they can just go to the file we have available for them at the state party, put the word Caldwell in front of county, and they have ads built for them. Or we can put evergreen ads together that are both in English and in Spanish, maybe even in Vietnamese, that if they wanted to be able to go put them on the radio, you don't have to find a Spanish language advertising expert to accomplish that. We can already have them built so that you can go in and do it. That saves money, and it also is a resource that stops you from having to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again. So that is something that I think is super helpful. The next thing that we can do is I want to bring back a program that actually was really great. It was a program called Project Lift, where they would take candidates that were first-time candidates and put them into training on how to run a campaign, how to use the voter file, how to access the voter file, what does it look like to run a campaign. A lot of people overthink it. It's math. It's all about addition, and that's how you win races. And that program has gone by the wayside. I want to bring that back. So that if you decide you want to run for office, you reach out to the state party, we can put you in Project Lift, train you over time on how to be a candidate so that by the time you file, you're ready to run a campaign. That's something that I think is really missing in small towns across the state because they don't have that muscle memory of having electeds and winning races. And I think we can go back and fix them. So those are just 3 tangible things I want to get done. In addition to making the party more financially solvent, I want to make a point. It's going to sound like I'm begging for money, but I always kind of am. But I'm just kind of giving you facts. The Texas Democratic Party right now, 6 million people voted for Joe Biden. 6 million. How many do you think give monthly to the Texas Democratic Party right now? Start throwing some numbers at me. More than 500. 500,000. About 1 million. The correct answer is, when I came in as chair, it was 1,500. For the state of Texas. The money is not there the way you think it is, because we, as a party, have not earned your grassroots support. That's my job. And that's why I'm going around the state doing events like this in every community that will allow me to come. Caldwell County, you are my 51st county since being elected less than 5 months ago. All right, I ain't doing these. And the point of doing it is, I've got to earn your support back as grassroots supporters of our party. If I can get 2% of people who voted for Joe Biden to give $10 a month to the party, I'm bringing in $1.2 million a month. And now I'm in a position where I can write checks to places like Caldwell County, right? But we've got to just rebuild this sucker from the ground up to where it's going to be a healthy organization. And I'm trusting that our grassroots are adults, that I can just have an honest conversation with you about where we're at, why we're there, and how we can get there. So once I'm there, I think we have a lot bigger programs we can get done. For right now, I'm trying to build a plane while we're flying it. Those are the 3 tangible things I think we can get done.
Awesome, thank you. Does the state party have a plan in place to figure out which candidates best fit each seat up for this next election?
I'm going to give you an answer that you probably don't like on this one, but as a farm kid, I'm always honest with you, and sometimes I might make you mad. Because the state party hasn't been as active in our grassroots of the party, a lot of people don't really know the role of the state party and what it's supposed to be doing. So legally, what my job is I am the chief primary administrator for the state of Texas. So I run the Democratic primary for Texas. What that means is that I believe it is inappropriate for me to pick sides in primaries, to tell candidates that I don't think they should run. That's your job to decide as a voter in Texas. My job is to treat everybody fairly, make sure they're able to get access to the voter file, let them know that if they need access to the filing, how to file, we're happy to coach you through it. And then once you, the voters of Texas, pick who you want the nominee to be, I bear hug them and I sprint forward to November. But until you pick who that person is, I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale. Because I think that the Democratic Party, particularly on the national level, picking favorites has created a gigantic problem for us. So you won't see that for me. Where that is not a good answer to that person's question is, I'm not going to go to people who have filed for office or are looking to run and try to push them into a different race. I just don't think that's my job. My job is to treat them fairly, and you, as a citizen of this state, your right is to figure out who your candidates are and where you're going. Now, if there are races where we have a hard time recruiting, if there's races where we typically don't have candidates, you will certainly and have seen the party recruiting candidates into those seats. And once we get a candidate in a seat, we put our hands up and we move to a different one, okay? But our goal is never to play favorites in primaries, so that's how I intend to operate.
Great. Will small counties be allowed to participate and vote online in the 2026 Texas Democratic Convention?
Well, probably not, because that's not permissible in the party rules. Right now, I know that there has been an effort underway from some people that they want to be able to create that. The party rules don't allow that at our conventions at this time. So large counties can't either. No one can vote online at a convention right now. That's not how the rules are written. So unfortunately, the answer to that is no.
In addition to the communications department that you discussed, what are some other ways that we can get more Latinos to stay in the Democratic Party?
Well, funny thing, why don't you ask them? A lot of times let me talk a little bit about when we're recruiting precinct chairs. We've had a big surge of people start to fill precinct chair spots. And people are like, what are you seeing what's causing that? Oh, I asked them to be precinct chairs. And I'm going to ask y'all before this is over, so get ready for that. But it's the same concept with people who are voting. We haven't been going into communities and asking people for their support. And I think that's a big problem. I got one ask of the chairman of the national party whenever I met with him. I only got a short period of time. I got to ask him for one thing. The one thing I asked him was to work with the DNC to do Hispanic outreach in Texas and figure out what we can do in partnership with the national on Hispanic outreach. We have to, as a party, get out of the mindset that our party is, or that a Texan is some giant white dude with a buckle and a big old hat that looks a lot like me. That's not what a Texan is these days. The average Texan is a 40-year-old Latina. The plurality of this state is Hispanic. White people are a constituency caucus. And I'm sorry that may make some people feel uncomfortable because it's not the way they've always thought about it, but it's the truth. And we have to build a party that talks to the people of Texas. And Hispanic people are the largest chunk of Texans. So it's not just about the comms department. It's about what are we doing in the coordinated campaign in our targets? Which communities are we going in to talk to about outreach? And are we going on the mediums where they're actually receiving news and information? I'm putting together a program right now that I'm going to try to run through some of our statewide constituency groups before I take it to the national level. And I'm going to try to get it funded. I don't know if I am. We may not. But I'm going to shoot for the moon. And even if we miss, we'll land amongst the stars. And do everything we can to rethink the way we're operating. Because we are hemorrhaging in Hispanic communities. And I'll make one more point before I go to the next one. It's not just hemorrhaging in Hispanic communities. We're hemorrhaging in Black communities too. And if you look at the top lines on the data, it's not women. Women, y'all are carrying your fair share. It's men. It's Hispanic men. It's Black men. It's white men. It's Asian men that we're struggling with right now. And I do think that taking our message, in the last election, it was very reproductive choice heavy. And I think that's important. I am a radically pro-choice person. I don't know that it should have been the defining issue of the entire election because it doesn't necessarily speak to those populations that we are hemorrhaging in our numbers. And so it should stay a core belief of who we are. But maybe when we walk in a room, what we lead with is trying to make your life more affordable, trying to get your kids in the best schools we can, trying to make sure you can go to a doctor when you're sick. So I think that would help us in a lot of those communities.
And this might not necessarily be something in your purview, but what is the plan for Trump's use of the National Guard and plans for militarizing Texas?
Yeah, they don't keep me in the loop on that. Wish they did. It's scary. Y'all are from Lockhart, okay, or around it. So y'all probably have a lot of people here that are a lot like where I'm from in New Boston. Lots of yellow flags with "Don't Tread on Me" on it, with snakes. Lots of lovers of liberty running around everywhere. I don't know where the hell they are right now, because they sure seem quiet while the government is coming in and plucking legal citizens and legal residents off the streets. They sure are sitting quiet while a tyrannical police state is being created in Washington, D.C. They sure are being quiet while they're locking state legislators in chambers, refusing to allow them to leave and forcing them to have police escorts. That doesn't sound like a lover of liberty to me. And so, to me, in a lot of these discussions, we need to make very clear to people that our intention as Americans is to stand up against a tyrannical government. It's how we were founded, and it's how Texas Democrats are going to operate it, whether Donald Trump likes it or not.
All right. Is the party going to more strongly promote the message that Democrats hold the majority and we need every vote?
I'm assuming that means holds the majority, as in most people are Democrats.
Yeah, that's what I was
yeah. So turnout is a huge problem in Texas. It's one of the lowest turnout states in the country. We talked about that a little bit earlier. When you're running in a political environment, there's a lot of different groups that do different things. I think it's important that the Democratic Party picks its lane and stays in it and does it well, and allows other groups who are designed to do other things do what they do well, so we aren't stepping on each other's toes. Here's an example. Candidates can spend their time trying to persuade people. Tanya can go and say, me being Mr. Democrat going to someone's house and asking them to vote Democrat is not going to be as effective as Tanya knocking on their door and saying, I know you're not a Democrat, I am, but let me tell you why you should support me. Tanya can work on persuasion. My job as Mr. Democrat in this state is to turn Democrats out to vote. So I am not spending a cent of my time and energy on persuasion. That is what our candidates will work on. That is what other groups will work on. There were 1.1 million Democrats who voted in 2020 and stayed home in 2024. That is a fifth of our voters, okay? So we are not doing our job of turning Democrats out to vote. So even before you talk about the people who typically don't vote, there are people who typically do vote that didn't show up either. So my job as Mr. Democrat is to turn Democrats out to vote. And I want to get that Democrat turnout number as high as I can. And if those 1.1 million Democrats had voted in 24, Colin Allred would be your senator. We would not have gone blue for Kamala Harris. But Colin did the persuasion piece, and we did not do the Democrat turnout piece. That is not me taking a position on whether or not you should support Colin or where they're at. I don't get involved in primaries. I'm just saying statistically in the last election, he ran up his persuasion. We did not run out our Democrat turnout. It is the core function of what we will be doing.
Great. Training for candidates is wonderful. Any plans for general volunteer training? So many people want to be behind the scenes but don't know how.
Yeah, that's great. So right now, I have an organizing department at the Texas Democratic Party. Do you want to guess how many staff members are in it? 1 for the state. I'm working real hard to get us back to a spot where we can start building that back up. She has actually been running regularly on our socials and stuff these volunteer opportunities of phone banks and canvases that we have been doing in targets for different places, at different rallies we were holding during the quorum break, things like that. So we're doing our best to try to channel some of that. I would like to see it much more robust. I would like to see a volunteer-driven organization. It takes order and organization to get that accomplished. And like I said earlier, we don't even have our precinct chairs filled at this point. So we're kind of starting from the bottom and working our way up. But it is my anticipation that when we get into the next cycle, what you'll see from the state party, you'll see a piece of it running a coordinated campaign as you have in the past. But this one will be a lot more coordinated, I hope. And then another piece of the party that is solely focused on recruiting, building, and deploying volunteers in this space. And that's the thing that I feel has kind of been missing, and that's absolutely a cornerstone of what we're trying to get done.
So if we are able to help solve for the funding issue in the Democratic Party, will some of those funds funnel down to local candidates?
They will not funnel down to local candidates, but they could funnel down to local parties. Here's why I say that. That's often a misinterpretation of a party's function of what it does. There is not a Democrat or Republican state party in the country that funds candidates. It's not the function of the party. You will sometimes see candidates on our finance reports. This is, again, really nerdy, and I'm sorry, but you asked. We're a compliance mechanism that allows for passing the funds from federal, state, judicial, and municipals. And so oftentimes we can assist candidates with joint fundraising agreements, JFAs, that will allow money to flow in and out and through to help us maximize fundraising abilities. So sometimes you'll see candidates on our finance reports, and sometimes you will in other state parties, but by and large, the state party, all across the country, either side, they don't fund candidates. We fund the apparatus of the party, and those candidates should be benefiting from a coordinated campaign designed to turn out Democrats so that those candidates can work on the persuasion piece. We're supposed to be in different lanes. So, no, that might not be the answer you want, that's the truth.
Okay. And how can we fight Fox News?
We can turn it off. You know, I've actually been going on a lot of right-wing radio and a lot of right-wing TV. I did a thing on Newsmax yesterday. I do a lot of News Nation. I've been on Fox News. And I've been people are asking me like why I'm doing it. And here's why. I did a bit on radio when I first became chair, and it was a far-right outlet. And on that outlet, they said, Chairman Scudder, glad that you're on. In 10 years of hosting this show, a Democrat has never accepted the invite to come on. And so that means that for 10 years on that show, no one ever heard a Democrat's perspective. And I think that that's a real part of the problem. What are you so afraid of, Democrats? You're right. It shouldn't be so scary to go on right-wing news, okay? And sometimes you get some really good one-liners in. I'm going to tell you one fun story. Everything I do turns into a story. I'm sorry. I got invited on Newsmax, and I didn't know what the subject was that they wanted to talk about until about 10 minutes before I went live on national television. And they sent me an email and they said, we're going to go live. Here's your topic. And what they wanted to talk about were the Arabian leopards that Donald Trump had gotten from Saudi Arabia for the National Zoo. I didn't follow that one very much, so I wasn't very well versed. So I was very quickly Googling. I have 10 minutes to Google and figure out what I'm talking about, what we're doing. But when I got there, I just kind of realized what this is really about is kind of world leaders realizing that all you have to do to ingratiate yourself is just a shoe shine and a smile, and he'll do whatever you want. And so I was like, okay, I feel comfortable with this. And I got a really good line in. What I said is, well, it sounds like Donald Trump and Joe Exotic have more in common than just a jail cell. People started commenting on it, and I got a whole thing on my social media, but it was because no one watching Newsmax had ever seen Democrats take punches. They've only heard about Democrats being cowards and being afraid to come on their shows. So I intend to show up on all those outlets, even if it's uncomfortable. There may be a time or two where I don't land the way I want to, but as a party, we've got to stop being so risk-averse. We have to take this script, throw it out. People don't vote with their brains, they vote with their guts. And they're going to trust you whenever you show that you stand for something.
All right, we received a few questions about messaging. Republicans have relied on fear and paranoia, rising prices and immigration, and the Democrats have been all over the map in recent elections. My concern lies in the fact that the platform or strategy needs laser focus and to prioritize issues instead of being all over the trying to be all things to all people. So I guess the question here is, how are we going to create a centralized and simple message for Democrats?
So let's talk about the political science behind this right quick. This is what my formal training is. My master's is in political management from George Washington. There's a term called a coalition party. A lot of other countries have lots of coalition parties. What it is when you have a lot of different people with different ideologies, different walks of life, that come under a single umbrella for a shared purpose to try to form a government and get things accomplished. And in reality, that's who we are as a Democratic Party. The Republican Party are people who are very similar, they're homogeneous, they tend to think the same way, come from very similar backgrounds. But the Democratic Party, not very much like that. What has happened is we have gotten so lost in that it has made it difficult for us to drive a point home. Remember, we have one of the most socially conservative demographics in the country, religious demographics in the country, as a cornerstone of our party, African Americans. And we also have socialists, and we also have atheists, and we also have Jewish folks, and Hispanic folks, and young folks. We have a very broad spectrum here that we're trying to hold together. The way you move forward is you figure out what they all have in common, and then you beat it like a drum, okay? And we have not been doing that. I think that you don't throw any of those members of our coalition overboard. They are a member of a team. The way you operate as a team is that we all have each other's backs. Even if it's an issue that's not my big number 1 point issue, we're all in this together, trying to create a government that represents people and not billionaires, not corporations. So let me talk a little bit about how you create a salient message. When I ran for the state Senate in 2018, I ran in the most conservative district in Texas, where a Democrat had not run in 20 years. I knew that winning was just not going to be a thing there, but I wanted to help the team to the best of my ability, and I knew that I could overperform a ballot. So I ran in an East Texas district for state Senate. And I decided that what I was running on was what was important to me and what was important to my community, and that was public schools. I talked about public schools until I was blue in the face. I became the de facto expert on public schools. My opponent was Bob Hall, the most conservative member of the entire legislature. And he would try to paint me as being all these crazy things. But everyone knew he's just the public school guy. It was like on my signs, support public schools, Kendall Scudder. I was the only thing I talked about. I was in a forum, Bob Hall says, this guy is a single issue candidate. I grabbed that mic and said, you're damn right I'm a single issue candidate. All I'm here to do is to make sure that your kids get access to a high quality public school and do everything that I can to stop Bob Hall and Republicans and tear apart our community public schools brick by brick so that your kids get an opportunity. So if you disagree with anything that my party stands for, just know I'm a single issue candidate who's standing here to fight for public schools. I did it over and over again. One forum, he called me a gun grabber. So I was here to take their guns away. And I said, Bob, I don't want your guns. I got my own. I probably shoot them better than you do. But I don't think a single person in this room thinks you need a flamethrower at a ball field. Speaking of ball fields, did you know that school vouchers would defund our arts and sports departments? I'm going to do everything I can to fight school vouchers and make sure we have fully funded public schools. And you go straight into public schools. The point of me telling you all of that is, on election day, I took a district that Hillary Clinton got 22% of the vote in to a district that Kendall Scudder was the top performing Democrat. I beat Beto O'Rourke in that district. I got 42% of the vote. I moved a district 20 points. How did I do it? I talked about what was important to my community over and over and over again like a broken record. And that's what we're going to do as a party. Because when you elect a Democrat, you know they will take on whatever billionaire and whatever banker we have to make sure that the working men and women of this country get their fair shake. We will flip whatever table we need to flip. Because the poor and working class people in this country are tired of groveling for crumbs while the wealthy in this country are gobbling every penny for themselves with boundless greed. You and your neighbors deserve a seat at the table, and that's what voting for Democrats in this election will give you. We will beat it like a drum.
Last question. You mentioned earlier that the Voting Rights Act has been consistently violated by redistricting in Texas. So why is taking it to court this time going to be any different?
Why is what?
Taking it to court.
Well, each time that it is violated, we take it to court. Court orders them redrawn, or court will draw them themselves, right? So our hope is that it isn't any different. Our hope is that that continues to happen. What's scary, and I think it's a legitimate fear, is that Trump has stacked the judiciary to not do things by the letter of the law, but to do them, in favor of the Führer. And so that's certainly a factor we're worried about, is what if the courts don't abide by the law? But assuming they abide by the law, as they have each time for the last 60 years, these maps wouldn't go into effect. And so at some point, elections have consequences and we lose control of things. But every step that we have to be able to fight and throw down, we're going to do it. Okay.
Thank you.
As I wrap up, thank you. Great. As I wrap up, thank you, Lockhart, for letting me come. And any other questions that we missed? I don't want to leave anybody out. Yeah, yes, sir.
They lost my card, I think. I just wanted, less of a question than to point out, you already mentioned the school vouchers. Another big issue here in adjacent counties is the data centers. People are losing their wells. People are worried about the electrical grid. We really hope the party will oppose that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that by resolution. Your county party can do a resolution to take a stand on that, send it to our state party, and our state Democratic Executive Committee members can get us to do resolutions on that and take a position on it as well. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Don Udell. First, I wanted to say, very sorry about your situation. I'm a product of rape. My mother had the same situation going on health-wise. There was a thing back in 1969 called blood transfusion. She refused to get an abortion. Oldest out of 10, there's only one person out of all her kids they're taking care of her while she's in the nursing home. That's the guy they go. It's the offspring of the raped man. It's me. I'm pro-life. I grew up in a Democrat household.
Sure.
Yuma, Arizona, 2 miles away from the Mexican border. My school, give you an example, true, 2,600 students, over 2,000 Hispanic, the rest were white, but just a couple of African Americans, and one African American and one Asian. I've traveled the world. I've traveled the country. I went from Arizona to Washington State. I watched both states go from red to blue. I am a business owner. I moved to Texas 2019. A couple of things that drives me nuts when I hear Democrats say they're for the working man. In Washington State, to start my business, it would have cost me a $45,000 business license. But being a master at what I do, I could not do the work. I had to have an employee that could just do permits. It's $200,000 a year. I had to have a journeyman. That's $150,000 a year. I had to have an apprentice. That's $100,000 a year. That's the going rates over there. I would add $5 million, $6 million in the bank just to get started because I got to cover their wages for 5 years before I can try to make a profit. In Texas, it cost me $475. I just wanted to say that real quick. Here's my point. You guys, Democrats in the state, left because they're redoing the lines. I can understand that. I can understand being upset about the lines. I'm not happy about ditching on your job. I have employees. I just actually had a guy ditch on a contract. I paid him. He ditched on a contract. I'm pissed because now I've got a 15-hour drive. I've got to pick up the slack. Instead of complaining, why don't we try to set by example? There are 9 states in the United States that have 0 Republican representatives in the House. 3 of them, just because they're too small, they only have a single representative. California has 48% Republican, 49% Democrat, but have less than 10% representation. New Jersey has got all 17 Democrats because of gerrymandering. Instead of sitting there screaming and hollering, why don't we set an example and holler at the other states to get their stuff together, get it in order, and we can do the same. Instead of screaming and crying, running off like a little 3-year-old that doesn't want to do your job that you're being paid for. You hurt people when you do that.
Well,
you delayed Kerr County. I was there for the flood. I've seen that water level 90 feet. 90 feet. I see children's mattresses in trees. Recovering clothes that belong to these kids. Recovering jackets that had names on them with these kids and get them to their parents. Because it was the last thing that child saw of Mary. Set an example, do the right thing.
You should have put money first.
Yeah, I have a couple of items for you here. Respect that you and I may not see eye to eye on everything, but what I will say is there's a couple of inaccuracies you have here. If you talk about Democrats leading by example, the perfect example of that would be in 2021, when there was a bill filed in the United States Congress that would have had federal nonpartisan redistricting committees that would have eliminated gerrymandering in both red and blue states. Okay? Yep. Every single Democrat voted in favor of it, and every single Republican voted against it. It is not okay for Democrats to be expected to be held to a different standard than Republicans in their standard. I sure hope so. Because actually, I let you speak. It's my turn. Because actually, if you look at the nonpartisan groups like the Brennan Center, they'll tell you that the gerrymandering advantage right now is a 23 Republican gerrymander advantage right now. So are there blue states that are gerrymandering? Absolutely. And Democrats would love to get rid of gerrymandering in this country. Republicans have not met us at the table to accomplish that, number one. Number two, when we went to this special session, we were under the impression that it was for flood relief. We participated for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks to try to get flood relief. Do you know how many hearings they held in 2 weeks? They held a total of 10. 1 was for flood relief, and 9 were on drawing political districts. Greg Abbott sets the agenda, and he has emergency powers as a governor, that he does not even need the legislature to be able to act. He could have done it before the special was called. During the special, he prioritized Trump's political district over flood. And that's actually, I know that Fox News told you the reason, hang on, I know Fox News told you the reason we left is because we weren't doing our job. The reason we left is because they wouldn't do the flood funding. We're used to losing fights. We've lost them tons here.
The reason they brought that up, you failed to mention, the court ordered you to bring it up after the last lawsuit by now. You forgot to mention that.
Bring what up?
To redo the lines that you guys previously sued for. You forgot to mention. Oh,
so are you arguing? Are you arguing? I'm not going to get in a fight with you by these folks. Let me. I want to address one more point.
No, you did one thing about military. He had 2 hours. He did one thing about military, and as a veteran here, I got one thing to say.
Yeah.
The veterans, United States veterans, defend the U.S. Constitution. I'm not arguing. I'm discussing. United States veterans are United States. This is where the problem is when you don't want to listen. United States veterans.
So, as we wrap up today, let me make a couple of points as we wrap up today. In order to have success in rebuilding the Texas Democratic Party, there are a couple of things that you can do to be helpful in that effort. Number one thing that you can do to be helpful in that effort. I mentioned earlier the disparity of filling precinct chair spots and county chair spots. Please sign up to be a precinct chair. I'm assuming you have vacancies in your precinct chair spots. How many?
Many. 12.
So there are 9 spaces right now that are completely open. More than 9.
More than
that are open in Caldwell County, where you live. So if you're looking around thinking, what can I do? Check your imposter syndrome at the door, okay? When fascism is knocking, when that guy's trying to run government, it is not the time for you to have imposter syndrome, okay? I was a precinct chair when I was 18. You're gonna be fine, okay? We'll walk you through, we'll help you along the way, and you get to be nosy and get in the voter file and see how your neighbors vote. It's great, okay? So, if you want to be a precinct chair, or if you're curious if there's a vacancy, please reach out to Chair Munoz on how to get that accomplished. It would be incredibly helpful. In order to build a grassroots movement, we have to be community focused, and it starts with you on your community level, number one. Number two, thing that you can do to be helpful, I talked about it earlier. I hope that you'll consider becoming a sustaining member of your county party. And then if your funds allow it, I hope you'll consider becoming a sustaining member to the state party. Though my household, we don't make a ton of money, particularly when I spend 18 hours a day volunteering on special projects. So we have to make some budgetary decisions. I give $50 a month to my county party. I give $20 a month to the state party. That's what I'm able to do. I give those people enough. But I hope that I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not doing myself. I hope you'll consider doing it, because if I can get 2% of Joe Biden voters to give $10 a month, we are now having a budget of $15 million a year to be able to do good stuff in Texas. May sound like what your contribution is small. It's not. We need it, and I hope that we can earn it if we're not there yet. I understand. It's going to take time. Last item that I have for you that you can do to be helpful is be proud of who you are as Democrats. And do not bow down to people like that who try to make you feel bad. We are doing the right thing here. Our reps did not leave their job and leave work. By the way, they get paid $600 a month, okay? But also, when you don't do your job, who gets to fire you? Your boss. Your boss gets to fire you. Well, guess who our boss isn't? Greg Abbott is not the boss of our state legislature. Ken Paxton is not not the boss of our state legislature. Donald Trump is not their boss. You are. And in polls in their districts, those polls told them exactly what they wanted them to do, and that was everything they could to stop these maps. In Gina Hinojosa's district, she had 700 people reach out to her office. 4 of them said they wanted her to come back home. She did the work of her district to great personal sacrifice. I am very proud of our delegation for what they've done. Be proud of our party, who we are, what we stand for. When I think of the successes of the last century, they brought to you by Democrats. I think of things like the New Deal that brought electricity to communities like Lockhart and New Boston, where I'm from. My granddaddy was born alone on a farm into a wash bucket with nobody there but his mama, on a farm that only had electricity because of Franklin Roosevelt, Sam Rayburn, the New Deal, and the Democratic Party. Democrats did that and created rural communities buying light bulbs and dishwashers and lamps. It saved the country from the Great Depression and saved the world during World War II. Democrats did that. Democrats passed the Great Society. The Great Society that brought Medicare, Medicaid, expansions of Social Security, pulled rural communities and low-income, working-class people out of poverty, reduced poverty in this country by 75%. Democrats did that. We put a man on the moon when everyone said it was impossible. It was a farce. It was something you only read about in kids' books. Democrats knew the ingenuity of investing in science, and we put a man on the motherfucking moon. And don't let anybody like that man make you forget that the last balanced budget that this country has ever seen was brought to you by the Democratic Party. But a point I want to make as I wrap up with you today is that that was not done just by Democrats. It was done by Texas Democrats. Because Sam Rayburn gave you the New Deal, and Lyndon Johnson gave you the Great Society. Houston scientists put a man on the moon. Lloyd Bentsen balanced the budget. When Texas Democrats have our shit together, this whole country sees such great things when we are laser focused on big, bold, progressive ideas that flip the table and change life for working men and women in this country. That is what the Texas Democratic Party stands for. That is what we will be running on in 2026. That is what we will be governing on in 2027. Thank you, Caldwell County.
There's tea and cookies in the back. Anybody want some? But again, let's give a good round of applause for Kendall.